From farm kids to AI, that's what we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to have to wear my glasses because I don't see worth a darn without them. What I want to talk to you about is all the 7 different generations that they put into the world, talking about how children progress. And I want you to think about 7 generations and what's happened, okay? The first generation is a silent generation. That's what they called it. It's from 1928 to 1945. Those children were part of the Great Depression. They were part of the Dust Bowl, and they were also part of World War II. That's why they called them the silent generation. They were bred to work on the farms. Everybody was working on the farms before 1940. That's just the way it was. People had independent farms, and that's how they were supporting their family. As a matter of fact, if we didn't have fertilizer, and this is something we need to think about right now, if we didn't have modern fertilizer, we can only support about 2 billion people on this planet in individual farms. Is that sinking in? We've got 8 billion. Okay, the Strait of Hormuz is a big problem because we don't have that. We don't have that fertilizer coming through. So think about that as I'm talking about these different things that children have to deal with. Where we are right now is a silent generation. We're going to go all the way to the AI generation, and each of those kids has got something different they need to deal with that's significant, and they're all over the map with what they had to deal with. It is so fascinating. I have to tell you, rehearsing this, re-researching it, it was so fascinating. Okay, the baby boomers. Now, I'm a baby boomer. My husband is the silent generation. He's 1940. He's 85 years old, and he definitely was born on a farm, and he definitely lived that generation. He behaved himself, went to school, did the things he was supposed to do, signed up, went into the military, and that was that. Okay, now the baby boomers, that was from 1946 to 1964. I was born in January of 47, so I was right after the war was over and right under this 1946 because I was born in January. Okay, so now what we had to deal with was the Cold War. It was so strange. It was all about nuclear war and building bomb shelters, and I was in the military, so we were always moving, so we didn't have a bomb shelter, and I used to think, are we going to get stuck? You know, we don't have a bomb shelter. Where are we going to go? What's going to happen to us? So that's the kind of thing I thought about. Also, there was the Vietnam draft, and of course I knew about that because the man I married only married me to have a child so he didn't have to go to the draft. That was his only reason. That's why he let me go as soon as the child was alive and he knew he was going to be okay, he out the door. So the Vietnam draft was a heavy weight on all of us at that time. Also, there were civil rights. Civil rights were a big deal. And everybody was supposed to go to college. The institutional push was so incredibly strong, and there was a limited safety net, okay? That's the period during the 1950s that I've talked about in another video about spare the rod, spoil the child. Man, I heard that until I wanted to strangle somebody. I just wanted to, don't ever say that to my parents again, because I was beaten and beaten and beaten and beaten. And it was all of us in that period have had parents, if they were military, who came back from World War II. And of course, a lot of them had PTSD, and so they had all kinds of issues going on. I certainly know my father did. And what an incredible problem that was, because people were always saying, because I was an only child, they always pushed it then. Otherwise, they didn't push it as much because it was used to having kids that behaved. The kids of the silent generation knew they had to support what was going on for the family. They knew they didn't have any other choices because they lived through the Great Depression. But the baby boomers thought, oh man, the war's over. Well, it wasn't, because there was the Cold War there, and there were the other things that I mentioned to you, the civil rights and all that. And so there wasn't a safety net. You didn't have a principal to go to when you were being beaten. You didn't have a social worker to help you. There just wasn't a safety net. Okay, then there was Generation X. Generation X was from 1965 to 1980. That was another strange time, but we're going to be looking at different things, okay? 1969 was Woodstock. Now, if you haven't looked up Woodstock, I've got a video on it for one, but if you haven't looked up Woodstock, you miss it. You've really missed something. There were thousands showed up in rain, and it was such a mess. Babies were born there. I mean, you just can't even imagine. But it was all about music to stop the Vietnam War. We'd had it. I mean, it had gone on for it was a 20-year war. Can you imagine? I had a bracelet on my wrist for, I don't know, so long that my wrist was raw with a rash. It had the name Colonel Hildebrand, and he came back. He made it. He made it back. We had these Vietnam bracelets for people who were prisoners of war to focus on them to hope that they would return, and Hildebrand returned. I was so pleased because I almost lost a job over wearing that bracelet. And that was another one of the things. That's one of those growth things that a young person has to go through. How do I say? I'm the sole support of a family of 6. I had my 2 kids, and he had his 2 kids, and he was going through school to get his degree. And I was the only support. I was the only one working. He had a scholarship, but there was no food from the scholarship. It was just tuition free. So, and I almost lost my job because I wore that bracelet. Anyway, we had Woodstock. We had incredible amounts of independence. We had our bell-bottom pants. We were streakers. We were running naked. Anything we could to try to get the attention of anybody over 30. God, we didn't trust anybody over 30 because they were the ones that were keeping the Vietnam War going. There was also global instability. Mothers had joined the workforce. You know, that happened in World War II. But after World War II, all these appliances were built so that women could have it really easy in the house. Now you had a real iron. You didn't have to put it on a wood stove. I mean, you had a blender. You had a electric oven or gas oven, and everything was so much more upscale that they were just sure that you could hold a full-time job and also take care of your family. So like crazy, mothers were trying to adapt to having a full-time job, and kids were trying to adapt to being latchkey kids. Oh, it was a really strange time in the world. And divorces were then becoming extremely common. Of course, you had divorces after the war, but now they were becoming really common. And a lot of it had to do with everybody was so tired because 2 people were working. Okay, then we had Generation Z. Oh, sorry. Then we had the Millennia kids. The Millennia kids were 1980 to 1996, and that's when the school shootings started. So you see, there were so many different major things that a child had to grow up. Just like the kids in the Ukraine now are growing up in war. These kids had to grow up in different kinds of situations. I always say the only thing in life you can absolutely count on is change. That's where it is. Okay, so school shooters, there were all kinds of new parental roles, and there was a great recession. But a lot of this came from the book that Benjamin Spock put out. It was actually published in the 1940s, but 50 million copies were sold by 1996. So what happened, and I think it was in like 30 languages. So what happened was there was this progression of a different way of raising kids. They were getting away from beating kids. It's very interesting that this change was going on. So there were new parental roles. There were new roles for what was going on and who was home and when they were home and who was working and who wasn't working, and a lot of changes were going on. Also, that was the beginning of getting hard to buy a house. You know, when I grew up, the dream was always to buy a house with a white picket fence around it and have it paid for before you retired, so you could retire right there and everything would be fine. You get a gold watch after 20 years of working for the company. That was all out the door. all out the door by the time Generation Z came along. That's 1996 to 2010. Now, 2010 to 2024, that was the COVID scare. But not only that, but between 96 and 2010 for the Generation Z, and 2010 and 2024 for what they call now the Generation Alpha, there's this incredible, overwhelming amount of screen time. Especially once COVID was here, because then the kids were seeing that their parents were spending all their time on the screen, on the computer screen. That's how they earned a living, and it was so obvious that all of this was going on, and the kids were completely inundated with this whole thing of the screen. And then Facebook came into play before 2010, and that became very popular. YouTube came in. All this social media stuff started happening, and of course you had all the things that happen on social media that we don't need to discuss here. What's important here is that you understand how the kids were inundated. That's what I'm talking about. How do we go from a farm kid to an AI kid, okay? So then we have Generation Beta. That's 2024 to 2039. We have a lot of social upheaval. Where that's going to go, of course, I have no idea at this point, but you've also got obvious climate change. It wasn't that obvious before, but now it's obvious. Things are this is supposed to be the dry season. Humidity's at least 80. You can see the clouds, and if you look over here, you can see they're even dark. They're anticipating some rain today. This is the dry season. This is also supposed to be summer. It is really uncomfortably cold. And it's been uncomfortably cold every morning. So what are we dealing with? We have gone from silent generation farm kids to the AI generation of the Generation Beta. The kids are so incredibly focused on the computer, social media, working as a job as a computer, not knowing how to grow green beans. I'm going to take these off so you can see who I am. Not knowing how to take care of themselves, not knowing how to build a house, not knowing how to wire a house with electricity, not knowing how to put in plumbing, having no idea how to catch and kill and slaughter a calf so that he can feed the family. Probably doesn't even know how to fish. You know, we've got to recognize what has gone on here and how much things have changed, and especially the silent generation and the baby boomer generation did not have anywhere near the problems with mental health that Generation X, the Millennial generation, Generation Z, Generation Alpha, and Generation Beta. All these kids, and part of it is social media. Don't blame it all on that. It's not. It's economic instability, world instability, supply line shortages, all kinds of financial issues, and now with not subsidized health care, no free health care in the United States. The free health care in Europe is having all kinds of challenges. There are so many challenges now. And what's happening is it's causing all kinds of mental health issues in young people, something that never happened before. But what's the other thing that's going on? Mom is not staying home. Dad is not the sole worker. And not only that, in many cases, Mom is working 2 jobs and Dad is working 3. Okay? We've got to understand that we've gotten pushed into a corner and the kids are on the floor behind their parents in that corner. That's the AI kids. They think, well, I don't have to go to school. Heck, I can get all the answers I want off AI. Well, I don't have to go to school. Climate change is going to ruin everything anyway. Why in the world should I bother? I don't have to go to school. Why should I take up all that money for tuition? It doesn't make sense. So keep in mind what's going on. Keep in mind what the kids are going through. Be nice to a child. Stop a child and make them feel better about themselves, because they may be sinking right now. And you could help. If you got any questions, ask me down below. If you want to talk to me, wait until the end of this video, and there will be information on SKOOL. It's a program online. I have several meetings a week. They are free. You can talk about whatever you want to talk about. The whole idea is to learn some self-help techniques to make life easier for you and your family, so that you don't fall into some of these holes in our society that are being created. Thank you.